Okay, if everything is working smoothly, we are officially back live for the second time in what is now called Smithy's Corner. We've made some technical improvements since 2 weeks ago now. The mics should be a little bit better. They should be more in line with the music. We've also given a command center to Lauren, our producer, so Lauren can now control everything while she listens. It's all very much a work in progress. This software was built last night. And most importantly, we're now on Instagram. So we're now tinyradio.net, that's D-O-T-net on Instagram. But apart from that, everything's the same. We're back in our cozy nook here in the University of Glasgow. We have Smithy's Corner blazoned up on the wall. And most importantly, Smithy himself is here. Hello, Mark.
Hello, Gavin. Thank you for having me back on this amazing podcast and to take another whirlwind around the world to talk about another crazy adventure.
Well, it's an absolute pleasure. Now, the adventure we're talking about tonight is another fascinating survival story. We're back in the ice, I'm afraid. And this time we're on the west face of Sula Grande, a mountain in the Andes. We are talking about the epic story behind Touching the Void, which is a 1985 climbing disaster involving two men, one man called Joe Simpson and the other called Simon Yates. Now, a book inspired the story. Joe Simpson wrote a book on the subject, and then since then a massively popular documentary film has been produced from that, and now there's even a play. So it really is a fascinating story, and I think what's interesting about this is, it's contemporary, it's pretty new. I'm pretty sure the book came out in 1990. I think it's a book that people are going to be reading for a long time because it's a really inspiring story. What do you think, Mark?
Yeah, unbelievable. It was one of the other classic Gavin recommendations to me very early on when I went through my peak content times. But yeah, I read Shackleton, the first one, and then I read this, Touching the Void, right after. And yeah, as Gavin says, we're not going to do it justice at all, because the writing in it is it's brilliant, and the documentary is really interesting.
Yeah, it's fantastic writing. So I think one thing which is really powerful about this book is not only is it a brilliant story about overcoming the odds, but the guy who wrote it, Joe Simpson, he's a very good writer. So it's very gripping, very descriptive. So if you've not read the book and you find this interesting, then I recommend you go and read it. The documentary is interesting as well because they didn't make a film. There is an attempt to dramatize it. They do show clips of what happened, but they also get a chance to explain themselves because it's a really interesting story as to the choices the guys make, and there's a lot of justification that needs to be said, and there's lots of conclusions you can take from it. So yeah, have a listen, see what you think, and I better let you set up the tale, Mark.
Yes.
What happened?
So, as Gavin says, we're in 1985, and two young British climbers, Joe Simpson and Simon Yates, they travelled to a remote corner of the Peruvian Andes to climb a mountain that no one had ever climbed from that side before. They were 25 and 21 at the time. They were really ambitious. They wanted to make their name known across the mountaineering world. They were really skilled, but importantly, they were completely alone. They were in these mountains. Well, there was one other extra guy who stayed at the camp with them. Yeah. But these were the only two actual mountaineers here. So Sula Grande, 21,000 feet. They wanted to do the first ascent of the climb. No guide, no established route, and no rescue infrastructure. So they started climbing up, and they thought it would take them 3 days to reach the summit. And they climb up what is called alpine style. And like Gavin says, there's brilliant images in the documentary about this. And you can see at this stage they're talking about they're really in the flow, they're in the rhythm. Joe describes climbing like ballet and powerlifting combined, like strength and grace. Like they're loving it at this point. This is when these two guys are in their element.
Yeah. So just to clarify, there's three guys at the base camp essentially. That's Joe Simpson, who wrote the book. He's 25. Simon Yates, who's 21, and Richard, who's essentially a guy that they pick up on their travels. This guy's basically, doing an endless gap year, traveling around the world. They pick him up, and they've never met the guy before, and they say, come up with us, you can sit here at base camp, which in the book is described as a very peaceful place, which is very relaxing almost to listen to, but it does show you how alone these guys are. They don't know anyone. and they're just in this tent kind of in the middle of nowhere. They wave goodbye to Richard, and they make their first descent, alpine style, up the west face of Sula Grande, and that is they're truly alone. So 21, 25, ambitious, foolhardy, and probably not thinking about the risks.
No, which there's loads of. But as Gavin said as well in the book, this bit's brilliant because he's describing about how they're going up and how they love it, and it's poetic in the sense that it's not poetic at all about describing the outdoors, and you can really tell these guys are like outdoorsy people and they're mountaineers. And yeah, it's probably key to say the way we'll describe some of this will be like equivalent of a Tesco meal deal compared to their Michelin star description of it. But anyway, the climb goes on, and after 3 days they do reach the summit, and it's tough, and they're really happy to be there. But that's when the thoughts start coming into their mind that actually reaching the summit is just the start. It's just the first hurdle. And now they've got to come down this mountain. And up to this point as well, the weather's been quite on their side. It has been 3 days, and they've also went through quite a lot of their water and food rations, which I should say comes into it.
Yeah, I noticed that in the book. So they said that they start. One thing that they need to make sure they always do is have a brew. And I wasn't quite sure. I imagine that was a cup of tea, but that's the only word they used for refreshment was a brew. So, and he said it takes an hour to do this.
Yeah.
So what they have to do is they take a chunk of snow, they put it in a pot, and they melt it, and that's going to be their hydration essentially. They make a cup of tea, and to melt that snow, what they needed was gas. And on their ascent, they're low in gas. So that's one potential thing that's gone wrong is they don't actually have that much gas for their climb.
Yes. So when they start actually descending down, I think this is one of the most mad bits about the documentary, what really set it for me. So they go up one face, and then they think it's going to be easier to go across a ridge to come back. And the two of them are combined by, I think it's a 50-foot rope or maybe a 30-foot rope between the two of them. And they think this ridge, because it's all snowy, is going to be super flat to walk across, or not flat to walk across, but they think they're going to be able to walk it. But it's really jagged edges, and they're going up and down. And basically they talk that if one of them falls, if one of them falls to the left, say on this ridge, the other one needs to jump to the right quickly, because then that's where the rope will hold them, which is crazy. So they've been up there for 3 days. They're starting to go down on, the afternoon of the 3rd. And there's another part where they go over what they call as a cornicing. So they're just walking, and at this point as well, it's total whiteout. They can't see anything at all. And I think as Joe starts walking, and just the ground falls away from beneath him. So he's walked onto what they call a snow bridge, and he's just started falling. And Simon instinctively takes the ice axe and just whacks it into the ground, but he stops the fall. But yeah, that gives him quite a scare. But these guys they're ready for it, and they know these kind of things can happen. But that's the kind of conditions we're talking about.
Right. So this was the first incident, and that was fine. Was any injury caused there? Or
no injuries, but it shook them up a bit. They start talking about it in the book, on the way up, they're loving it. This is what they want to be. It's tough conditions for me. I couldn't imagine it, but they're type 2 fun. I'm going to love this after.
Yeah.
At this part, they're no, get me off this mountain. They've been 4 days in the snow climbing and that. This is where the fatigue really starts to set in.
Yeah, so we need to clarify, because we've raced through the beginning here, but they have traversed this incredibly difficult face to get up Sula Grande. They're absolutely knackered at this point. They've done an insane amount of climbing, stuff that you and I just would feel physically impossible. They've already got through that, and now they're doing their descent. So obviously there's their own hydration, their own fatigue, and the weather. These are all things which are massive risks for them. Yeah, and it really is a perilous situation.
Yeah, so they do this fall, and then they're forced to bivouac in a snow hole again. So they're digging these holes into the mountain where they're getting the snow out, and then they're going and sleeping in this. At this point, I think it's day 4, and they've no food left. They've got kind of the last bits of their fuel to start melting the snow, and this is like I said, this is where they're starting to think things aren't going as well. The next morning, they set off, and I think they have 1 cup of tea before they go, and they say that was the small good bit they remember of this whole thing. And basically Joe, and again, I'm going to describe this terribly compared to the book, but they're both attached, and Joe falls off an ice cliff, and as he does, he swings into the rock face, breaking his tibia, or actually, sorry, driving his tibia through his knee joint. So, I don't know if you want to describe kind of that part. So he breaks his leg, he kind of knows it.
Yeah. This is quite interesting because they talk about this a lot in the book. It's essentially he breaks his leg, which in his mind is a death sentence. So obviously he's got this excruciating amount of pain, but beyond that he just knows, given how isolated they are, how alone they are, he just knows that means he's dead. Yeah. Despite being fully conscious and alive, that means in his mind he's dead. Yeah,
3,000 foot up. Like, these are the guys, they know they're pushing it, they know they're at the edge of what can be done, and it's kind of a unwritten rule or contract that, yeah, if one of you break your leg up there, it's hard to get down the two of you healthy, but the other one one person coming down with a broken leg is nigh on impossible. So it's at that point you kind of accept that you are probably going to die.
Yeah. So you kind of know you die, and you can't. And also from Simon's perspective as well, he needs Joe to get down. Well, he doesn't necessarily, but it coming in a pair is useful, and it's pretty hard to get down by yourself.
Yeah.
So his situation's not looking good either.
No, and there's a bit in the book as well. So Joe breaks his leg, and then he's waiting for Simon, and he's trying to work out if he should really tell him the truth or not. And I think he does. I think he tells him the truth quite quickly, and throughout the book, actually, telling the truth quite quickly is quite a key point. But at that point, he totally puts his faith and his life in Simon's hands. And Simon's described as being quite cold at this point. But he takes longer than Joe would have liked to. But he actually decides, okay, he makes a decision, we're going to come up with a plan for how to get you down the mountain.
Well, and also an interesting bit is the way they reacted to it psychologically, because they didn't really acknowledge it, because Simon offers Joe some paracetamol, essentially, which is like a headache, basically a headache painkiller, and that means so there's the refusal, as if it's going to help really with a broken leg. It's not really going to help. It's not really going to achieve anything, but it's just doing this little symbolic thing to not acknowledge it, put it out of mind, and just focus on the task at hand.
Yeah, definitely. Then the storm starts getting worse and the light fading, and they've come up with this system where Simon lowers Joe using 2 ropes tied together, so 300 foot in total. So no anchors as well, like they're not like anchoring things in. It's basically Simon just makes what they call like a snow seat. So he digs himself into the snow and he lowers Joe like over these cliffs with a broken leg. And there's a horrible bit as well where Joe says basically like his leg's in agony, and Simon's just lowering him, and he's like, try to tell him to slow down, and Simon's just like, because he knows he wants to go, he's just like no compassion at all. He's just like whacking his friend over there, like ragdolling this leg around. It's brutal.
So just clarify what's happening here. So Simon's built himself a seat at this point. He builds himself a seat in snow, and he's got this beat. Essentially, is it like a relay system where so he's just lowering Joe down the hill. He's just letting the rope fall through his hands, and Joe starts skidding down. Yeah, it's through a belay system. So they've put both ropes together, and they've tied them in the middle with a knot, which is quite key in a second. And they're lowering down. So he lowers Joe down, and then Joe then finds some land to sit on, and then Joe takes the weight on his rope, and then Simon then comes down from the point as well through they use the snow as an anchor at the top. And they do this, I think it's like 5 or 6 times successfully. So they make it down quite a lot of the mountain. And whenever Joe takes his weight off the rope, that's when Simon knows, it's time to change over. Or if he comes to the end of the rope, Joe tries to take his weight off. But then at one bit, when Simon's lowering Joe, he accidentally lowers, or they're quite far apart at this point, because remember it's 300 foot rope, so it's quite far. And Joe's going down, sliding, and then he can feel his feet disappear from under him. And Simon's actually lowered him, he's put him over an edge. So Simon feels the rope go tight,
like feels all the weight on the rope because usually Joe's hanging onto it a little bit, and he feels the rope go tight, and he's like braces, and he's like, oh, and he can kind of feel what's happening, and then Joe's not taking the weight off the rope. So at this point as well, Joe is screaming up because he can kind of see below him, like there's nothing there. And Simon just keeps lowering the rope because he thinks like, oh, he's going to get to something eventually. So this happens, so he keeps lowering the rope, and then it gets to the point where there's the knot in the rope, which like split the two ropes, and at that point, stalemate.
So, just to clarify, so Simon has accidentally lowered Joe over the edge of a cliff that he's not seen. You said it was whiteout blizzard.
Yeah.
Okay. Joe obviously notices. Simon doesn't. Simon, he probably feels a weight change, I imagine.
Yeah. He's like, if you imagine like really deep snow, he's like dug himself into the snow.
Yeah.
But it's only the snow that's keeping him on the side of the cliff. It's not like anything else.
Yeah. Okay. So basically, yeah, as you say, stalemate. There's nothing either of them can do at this point. They're both locked into their positions. Nice. And well, before we take a break, did we want to hear Simon's story at this point up until, or should we take a break and then work out what happens next?
Let's take a break.
All right. Well, we have a lovely song for you. It is a wonderful song by Katie Kirby. Every time. Enjoy the tunes, and we'll be back after the break to work out what happens with Simon and Joe. Okay, we're back. I hope you enjoyed that song. That song was essentially, I found it on the Free Music Archive, completely free to play. And I can't believe it. Very nice. And we are now taking from that nice serene song back into the horrible world of Simon and Joe, where one of them is dangling off the edge of a cliff with the other stuck in a bucket seat trying to hold his weight. Mark, what happens next?
So, like you say, Joe's just been hanging around, literally. And normally it takes them about 5 minutes to reset the ropes. But at this point, they've been hanging here for 1.5 hours. Again, they're 3,000 feet up. The snow is blistering at this point. It's become really dark as well. Wind chill is really starting to be a bit. So Joe's talking about his only way out is if he climbs up the rope. So he's got these things called Prusik knots. So it's like 2 bits of rope. And he describes taking them out, and he's going to try and like, you can't climb up a rope like this, like even just with fresh hands, but his hands are freezing. So he's going to use these ropes that if they grip the rope, he can kind of like belay himself up and move them. Okay. But he's using his teeth. He can't feel his fingers. Like imagine where he is at this point. He's got his gloves off. And then eventually he's trying this for about half an hour, and he eventually drops one of the Prusik knots, and at that moment he's done.
So this is the second time that Joe has had to accept that he's dead.
Yeah.
So the first time he breaks his leg, he thinks I'm dead, and then they start lowering him down. They get hopeful. They're feeling productive. They get a bit of momentum, and then he's lowered off the edge of the cliff, and he starts climbing up the rope, thinking he might be able to get up.
Yeah.
And now he's dropped his what's it? He drops the piece of, is it carabiner or something?
No, it's a Prusik knot. It's like a bit of string, but it's key for him at that moment. So yeah, like you say, completely helpless, wind chill. He's decided then he's ready to die. Yeah. Simon, on the other hand, he's sitting up there, and he doesn't know how far Joe is from the ground. It could be 10 foot, it could be 100 foot. And he's starting to slide down the mountain as well. His snow isn't holding. Mm-hmm. And if he goes, they're both dead. Then he remembers his penknife is in his bag. Mm-hmm. And then what he says is a split decision. He takes the penknife out.
Boom. And I remember in the book he said the rope was so taut that all he had to do was just gently touch the rope with his penknife, and it comes loose.
Yeah. So he cuts the rope, not knowing if he's dooming his friend, but he makes that decision anyway. Was it betrayal? Was it survival? Was it logical? Was there a choice?
This is where a lot of people debate it, and why it's such an entertaining story, which is you have to consider the position of both the guys that they're in. Simon's already made quite a good decision. Well, he's decided to help Joe in the first place, and I should point out that Simon's fingers at this point are seriously affected by frostbite, and that was just getting worse. He was sat up on the slope, being pummeled by the wind, holding the rope, and his whole body will be aching. His body's under an incredible amount of tension. He's holding out for as long as he could, and as soon as he remembers the penknife, he sees that as his shot at survival, essentially.
Yeah. After the book came out, and like in the years after, there was a lot of people that debated it. I don't think there's a debate at all. I think he he made the decision. And I think a lot of this story is about making decisions, and I think he didn't have any other decision to make. Morally, not morally, he made the decision to survive, and it was the only decision he had.
Yeah, and so what he's just done there is he's sent Joe falling essentially off the edge of a cliff into a crevasse below.
Yeah.
So in his mind, he's probably killed Joe.
Yeah.
But hang on, because Joe is the one who wrote the book.
Spoilers! Absolutely spoilers there by Mr. Adams.
No! It's intriguing. How the hell did that happen?
Well, before we get to that point, there's a whole part of Simon just going into automatic mode. He's still way up, so he digs a snow cave. Again, he's on the mountain for the night. He's hypothermic, dehydrated. He thinks Joe's dead. So he has a horrible night that night, but the next morning he wakes up, and again, cold, calculated, he makes the decisions. He needs to descend alone. So he starts making his way down the mountain, which at this point, solo as well, is not an easy task.
Yeah.
He sees, it's now daytime, he sees a huge crevasse below where Joe was hanging, and he calls out Joe's name, no reply, and he concludes he's dead. And from then, he walks on.
Sorry, I shouldn't laugh there.
No, you should not.
I love the story is guys either concluding that they themselves or their mates is dead.
Yes. Yeah, definitely.
Can I just point something out here at one point? Simon's sleep, when he tries to go to bed after cutting the rope, he says his mind is spiraling. And he's basically full of worries. And he's through these worry spirals. He's feeling of guilt and trying to justify what he's done. And then he says that feeling's just overcome by pure thirst. He's suddenly got this survival problem that he's incredibly thirsty. And so he says that feeling of thirst just pushed the thought from his mind, and he just had to crack on and focus on the task at hand. So there are some times when they were feeling remorseful, and there's some times where they were just thinking about their perilous situation.
Yeah, they are mad in the terms of mountaineering. You don't survive if you can't put your emotions to one side or them kind of other thoughts. Like, you have to be very practical, very pragmatic.
So, are we staying with Simon just now, or are we going to look at Joe's situation?
I'll be a quick wee summary of Simon. So he does make it down the mountain, and he talks about, Richard, the other guy back at the camp, he thinks in his head, like, oh, what am I going to tell Joe's family? And then he thinks at one point, I could dress this story up differently, that I didn't cut the rope. And all this is flowing through his head, but the minute he gets to see Richard at the camp, he just tells him the complete truth. And then from there, he stays at the camp for about 2 or 3 days. And Richard's like, I want to get the hell out of here. Like, this is not a good situation. It's not a good vibe. It's not his hippie where he wants to set up. But Joe talks a lot about, like, he just washed for like 2 days, trying to get the mountain out of him.
Sorry, Simon.
Simon, just washed in the river for like 2 days straight, trying to get the mountain out of him and to get the thoughts, or to get what happened on the mountain out of his head.
Right. And do they leave? Do they go?
Well, they stay there for 2 nights, and they're going to leave the next morning, and it's a really misty night, and out of the darkness they hear, Simon! Simon! A shout from the darkness.
Who on earth could that be? Because I thought that Joe fell off a cliff into the crevasse.
Well, there is known to be a lot of Peruvian donkey herds that shouts. No,
it sounded a bit like that.
yeah. So, what happens with Joe, Mr. Gavin?
Yeah, where is Joe?
So after the rope is cut, he describes just sitting there. So he's been hanging out for an hour and a half, and then all of a sudden, doof, the rope just goes. So he's falling, and he describes it falling like I think it's 200 feet or something like this, and he can it's dark at this point as well, and then he feels his cell just slowly slide against and then it goes completely dark. So he's fallen into a crevasse, and then luckily he kind of rolls down this crevasse, and then he's on a ledge. And the way he describes, again, like it's, I don't know how else to say it, a crevasse after seeing the documentary, but it's nuts. Like, it's just like he's looking around, ice, huge ice walls everywhere. He describes it as like there's just no sign of life at all.
I felt like he's in prison at this point. He's essentially in a tomb.
Yeah. A tomb where nothing should be living at all.
And I remember at this point, he starts, a range of emotions go through his head, but he just starts swearing his head off at one point, punching the wall. And he describes it as childish, and he's ashamed of himself when he thinks back at it. So, and it's quite interesting because he says that he makes a decision where he's just mindlessly banging, and I think maybe exhausts himself and just gets a bit lethargic, and then he decides that he's just going to have to crack on and find a way out of it.
Yeah, so he's sitting on this ledge, and the other thing is the rope has came down, but it's not came into the crevasse with him. So he starts at one point, he starts like frantically pulling on the rope, thinking that Simon's body is going to come over the edge, because he thinks Simon's just like falling over the edge. And you can imagine his surprise when the rope comes and there's no body at the end.
Yeah.
But he actually sees that the rope's been cut.
Yeah.
How do you think you would react at that situation?
I guess you'd be gutted.
Yeah.
I mean, it's so hard to say. I mean, would you be thinking coldly and logically at that point, thinking fair enough, or would part of you be gutted? I don't know. I can't say. It's impossible.
I like it. Well, I don't know. I think you know where you would go.
No, I mean, yeah. I think it's fair enough when you analyse the situation. But he describes himself as. Does he feel disappointed or something?
Oh, like you say, he breaks down. He starts crying. He's annoyed at himself as well because he thinks himself is like this tough mountaineering guy. But he's someone who keeps his cool all the time, which is really key when you're doing these. But at this point, he's just swearing into the void. He's banging his axe and stuff like this. Like, he thinks the world is out to get him.
Yeah.
And
that's not going to help him, is it?
No.
His situation.
That's not going to help him. And he describes as well, I always remember his head torch was quite low on battery. But he knew he wanted to keep the head torch on, but then he was like, he thought, I'll save the battery, turns it off. But it was that overwhelmed sense of being alone again and feeling like nobody's there for him. So he turns the head torch back on, even though he thinks it's not going to help him. But what he decides to do is he's got a ice screw, and he manages to put that in the wall, and he takes the rope, and he knows he can't climb up. Even with a good leg, he would really struggle to do this climb, but he decides the only way is to go down, which is really horrible for him emotionally, going further into the darkness. But he says he doesn't want to just sit there and die. So he decides he's going to go down into this crevasse as far as the rope will take him, because also once he goes down, he can't come back up. He's not got anybody else there. But yeah, he decides to take a shot with it and lower himself into the darkness, which I think is quite terrifying, but it's also, again, pragmatic. And
I guess that would be his only option at this point.
Yes, or he could sit there thinking somebody might come and save him.
Yeah.
But no, nobody's coming at this point. Yeah. Actually, sorry, I think he does sit there until the morning. No, I think he does one day in the crevasse.
Right.
Because I think he knows at that point that Simon's definitely went past, or Simon's dead. But yeah, he goes on to lower himself down, and this is a crazy part. He's just lowering himself into the darkness, can't see how far this floor is, and then he sees a shine of like a beam of light come in, and he thinks, oh my god, this is amazing. But he doesn't know how far away as well the ground is for him, but he can see a snow slope up to this beam of light. So I think he either decides he run out of rope. That was the key thing as well. He runs out of rope, and he decides, you know what, I'm just going to drop myself, and however far it is, hopefully the snow will get me. And he ends up dropping himself, and it's literally something like 7 or 8 feet. I think he'd lost the torch at this point as well, so like he doesn't know, but he says it's probably the luckiest part of all. Like, it could have been hundreds of feet, but he drops, and he's like, oh, brilliant. And then he sees this, like, it's a slope up to the light, and he starts crawling. He's like, oh, I can easily make this crawl. And as he starts crawling across it, he hears crunching, and he notices that it's not actually compacted snow, it's a snow bridge to another, like there's another crevasse down below. It's horrible. So he starts like edging, you can imagine, you got a broken leg and he's crawling on his stomach, and you're going up to this, to what you think is going to save you out of this hole.
Okay, so is he crawling towards light?
Yeah, he's crawling towards the light at this point. And yeah, he's cracking away, and he does eventually, pops his head out, and he's quite far down the mountain. A mix of Simon's efforts to lower him down and the amount of
fall.
Yeah, the fall, like Shackleton. We must slide, boys. Sliding No, don't say that. But sliding's a good way to get out of a mountaineering situation. Oh.
Okay, so he has made progress.
Yeah.
He's broken his leg,
Yes.
but he has made progress.
Yeah, definitely. So this story's mad. So like they go from one problem to the next problem. The next one they get onto is he's now at the ice fall at the bottom of the mountain. So they've had to actually come in this way as well. Ice falls, to get into these places, the ice is always moving, loads of crevasses, which Joe's actually fallen down. But now he's got one broken leg and he has to try and make his way through the ice fall. At first, it's day one, he can see Simon's tracks. So he actually gets on the same tracks as Simon and he's following his tracks through for most of that day. But as the night starts to come in, it starts to snow, and he says like he should have stopped and rested, but he was so scared of like being alone and not having the tracks to follow, he pushed on anyway.
Wow.
And that kind of shows you like, yeah, how alone he felt out there.
So is he crawling at this point?
Yeah, he's like bum sliding, the technical mountaineering term. Yeah, he's bum sliding and he's following Simon's tracks through the icefall glacier a bit. Sorry.
No, go on.
Oh yeah. So
Just grinning at you.
this bit's crazy because it's like it's a maze to get out of this, and like you say, like he's on his bum, so he's doing this thing where he's on his bum, and then eventually the snowfall, and the next he spends a night just crawling, and then the tracks just completely disappear. So he's then having to navigate through this, and I don't know how to explain. Like going through a marsh or something like that, or like I don't know quite how to explain it because I've seen pictures of it now. But it is a maze. Like you go down wee tracks, and then it's like, oh, it's just a complete fall, and then you need to backtrack all the way. So he's doing this thing where he's bum sliding, and he's standing up, looking for the best path, and then like having to slide and then like move along, but then getting to points where he's having to backtrack like almost 30 minutes of work.
And he's doing this through the night.
Yeah, through the night and then into the next morning as well. Through the night, he's mostly following Simon's tracks, but the next morning he's completely by himself.
Right. And how long is he doing this? And what's that? I know that he eventually reaches a boulder field.
Yes. So, but probably a good one to say beforehand is one of the things that like it's amazing about the guy is he's really disciplined in terms of like he sets times with his watch. So he talks about it as like, oh, in 20 minutes I want to get to this point. And he really talks about that's the thing that helped him the most is like he would crawl to somewhere, and if he made it in the 20 minutes he would be like jubilant, he'd be like celebrating and stuff like that. But if he didn't, he would really beat himself up. He was like, oh, you're rubbish, you're going to die out here kind of thing. But
I do like that because it's all about approaching an impossible task or a task that feels impossible. It always is just to break it up into one chunk at a time.
Yeah, he broke it into just like these tiny little bits so he could just keep going and going. So at this point, I'm just trying to remember how many days. So to get up the mountain, they camped at the bottom, they camped halfway, they camped just before the summit, so that's 3 days. They summited, camped just after, that's 4 days. Then the accident happened on the 4th day. And then they start lowering, and that's like the kind of 5th night when they cut the rope. Then, so we're 5 nights in at this point when he cuts the rope. They then spend a night in the glacier. So that's the first snow hole, like when he's on the crawl, and then he's got a second night alone as well. So he starts to get out of the glacier. Oh yeah, sorry, you go for it.
No, you go on. You're
It's good.
You're in a groove.
I'm too enjoying it too much. The documentary is flowing back into me. And actually, on that point of flowing, he talks about horrible because again, similar to Simon, he's super dehydrated at this point, and he talks about being able to, towards the end of the glacier, being able to hear the water flow underneath him. Remember, he's crawling. He can hear the water flow underneath him, but he can't actually get to the water at this point.
Yeah.
So he's going delirious just hearing this water.
And just, I know that Simon at one point said he could smell the water in the snow.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
they were that thirsty.
It's madness. But then he gets out, so then he gets onto the rock fall, which again is it's horrible. And at this point he's completely sunburnt as well. He's completely dehydrated, and he can't slide anymore because he's on the rocks. So he ditches as much of his stuff as possible, and he creates like a kind of stookie with his roll mat for his leg, and he has to use his ice pick as a walking stick. But these ice picks are like 30 centimeters long at most, and the documentary is really good for showing just how horrible that would be. So he's falling almost like every 3 steps or stuff like this onto a broken leg.
Oh god. So, well, let's summarize it so far. So he's off the glacier and into the boulder field. He's now hobbling along using an ice pick as a makeshift walking stick. Mark, is this the bit where he starts hearing Boney M start rattling through his brain?
It is. So this is when he starts going a bit delirious. And what was it called? Yeah, so Boney M, he talks about getting the song just stuck in his head over and over.
He said he hates the song as well.
Yeah, he absolutely hates the song. It's not even a tune he likes. Like, it's not even a classic. Like, it's just like
it's not
plaguing him. No.
Yeah.
There's another part to this as well where he sits there and I think he sits there and it's the first time he can see kind of like where he's trying to go, but he just doesn't think he'll get, like, it starts to creep in his mind that he won't actually get there. And again, he just decides that I'm going to die. But then he talks about oh, I could just get in his sleeping bag, curl up and die, and that's what his first thought was. And he's kind of like matter of fact about it. He's like, that would be such a lame way to die. So he'd rather as well, like, after being stuck on the rope and being stuck in the crevasse, he really liked the idea of dying with someone and like crawling towards them. And he writes about it like unbelievably, but it wasn't actually the thought that he would live that would motivate him, but he'd rather die trying to be with people. I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, that's amazing. Well, I'm just looking at the time since we're 10 minutes over. How close is Joe at this point to salvation? Is he still? What hurdles does he have to complete in order to get back to Simon and Richard?
Oh, at this point, Joe's got no idea what hurdles he's going to complete. He's absolutely lost his mind. He's going in circles. His mind's losing him. And then he gets a sniff of something. So he's just like, at this point, he's absolutely losing it. And then he gets this whiff, and he can't work out what it is at first, but he describes it being like smelling salts. And basically, he's crawled through the camp's toilet. Oh. So where the guys, because they're camping in tents and that, so they don't want to go to the toilet next to their tent. So they actually go up the mountain just a little bit, like a 2 or 3 minute walk. And he's actually, luckily, he's crawled into the toilet, and that's what's taken him out of his delirium. And from then, he keeps trying to crawl, but he's just shouting at this point as well. Like he's shouting for Simon and Richard.
Right. And is this the shout that we described as the
yak?
Yeah, the yak. I can't remember what the animal was.
Oh, the deer. Yeah, God, don't do it about the deer. That's another Smithy's corner. But Richard actually describes this one of the best, as they woke up in the middle of the night and they hear this shout and they're like, no way, because they think they're dreaming, because like they've been 2 days in the camp, they think he's dead, they think he's gone. Impossible that he could survive. And even once they get out of the tent, it's like a misty night, so you can imagine it's a misty night. They're hearing this voice and they're like, and Simon's very, again, matter of fact, he's on it. But Richard says like he couldn't really trust what's happening. And then even once they came across Joe, he had to kind of pinch himself, because so much of the like human being of Joe had withered away. Like at this point, again, sorry, side note, Joe talks about on the crawl, like peeing himself. So he pees himself and what's it called? But he just doesn't care. He actually likes the sensation because it reminds him that he's a human. Right. But yeah, so they find him in this state where he's just completely burnt, broken leg, covered in poo, covered in pee, and it looks like a ghost as well. So they had to like kind of pinch himself that, oh, this is actually him, and this is still a really tense situation.
Wow. And so he's saved.
He's saved, and they take him into the tent, and they say the bit that kind of cracked them all up, well, made them kind of refocus again, was Joe asks him like, oh, where's my trousers, because he wants to change his trousers because he's peed himself, and they have to explain that they burnt all his clothes because they thought he was dead. And they say he got really pissed off about this, and they said when he got really pissed off, they were like, yep, he's back.
Guys, just an incredible story, and it draws up so many questions. So the documentary is fascinating because, as I say, they dramatize it, and they also give Joe and Simon, they talk throughout it, their thought process during it and their decision making. And Simon, in cutting the rope, he inadvertently saves Joe, because Joe would have frozen if he was left hanging. And it's all summarized in this beautifully written book, and the play is very good as well. So we'll be putting the links in the YouTube video of basically all the literature that we've indulged in order to create this show. I think I've covered everything that I wanted to say in terms of our second broadcast. It's been a pleasure having you once again, Smithy, and hearing your thoughts on Touching the Void.
Yeah, no, thank you very much. And will I try and sum it up with
Please
this sum up?
do.
I'll keep this one short, but it was like, I guess my key takeaway is like the decision making under pressure. There's not quite right or wrong decisions, but you got to keep making them, and even wrong ones. If you decide to stop after that, you're stuffed. And I think that was one of the best things that kept on going was, the 20-minute system, and just kept coming up with these, making different decisions.
Exactly. Yeah, I think that's definitely my key takeaway. When there's impossible task, just split it up into reasonable chunks and just crack on with those reasonable chunks. Who knows? You might just make it out alive, which Joe Simpson inevitably did.
Yes.
And that brings us nicely to the end of the second ever Tiny Radio broadcast, the second episode of Smithy's Corner. We really enjoyed talking about Touching the Void. We hope you've enjoyed listening to us. We've queued another song. This is Vienna Ditto. Whatever comes my way. Thank you very much for listening, and enjoy the tunes.